With that, we're going to get into our afternoon program, and it's a pleasure to introduce Nikolas Badminton. Nick is a futurist. As I said earlier, he focuses on all things technology, whether that's things that we haven't heard of yet or things that we are starting to see on farms. And he's going to talk about the future of farming. You ready? Just getting things ready there? Cool. Yeah, so he's got a great talk. Some of it is stuff that might make you a little bit queasy or the kind of thing that might make you uncomfortable in terms of automation and places where automation could go, for example. But it gives us perspective and something that we can anticipate in terms of looking ahead to the future. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Nikolas Badminton.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name's Nick Badminton. I've been a futurist for a number of years. I spent about 21 years working in technology, so I'm a technologist first. But I actually grew up in the southwest of England in a village called Martock. And in Martock, there was a slaughterhouse in the center of the town, which smelled great every other week when they emptied the blood tanks. My dad was a manager there and then went on to work in the dairy industry and the food product industry for another 28 years. My mother used to deliver bread. I used to help her. I grew up in a farming community. I actually worked on a dairy farm when I left school. I didn't really like school. I didn't agree with how they taught me, so that made me rebel and not do any of the exams, which isn't very good for long-term career prospects. But, you know, I worked in the dairy industry, and then my parents said, hey, would you like to go to university? And I was like, yeah. It's like, okay, you need to go to tertiary college first, then on to university. What do you want to do? I said, I'm really good with computers. They're like, you're right. So this is what brings me here to today. But really, I'm going to start off this presentation in a way very similar to the way that Dan started off this morning. All of that energy and maybe a little bit of acrobatics. So what if I was to start the futurist talk like Dan Thurmon would, right? But I need your help. So I need you to clap, yeah? Somebody, yeah, okay, we're going to clap. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm really going to do this as well, okay? Oh, there's no steps here. Ready? Watch the screens. Okay, so Dan's a real inspiration, right? This little robot's less of an inspiration, but it kind of shows what robotics has kind of got good at, very, very narrow applications. This kind of shows what robotics is today. Oh. I think we're safe. I think we're safe for a little while. Humans won, the robot overlords 0 for the time being. Or is it? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about technology. I'm going to talk about how we got to today. I'm going to talk about a number of different areas that I think are going to have huge impacts in the agriculture industry and what that means for you. Some considerations, some challenges, what we can learn. There's going to be some things at the end that are going to sort of blow your mind a little bit. There have been people come up to me with things that I didn't know about that were happening in both agriculture and other areas that I've added to the presentation. So if you've got ideas and thoughts or things that maybe you don't agree with, or you've got, hey, do you know about this technology? Come and talk to me afterwards. That's how I stay on top of my game, by talking to the people that are actually doing the work out there. But I'm going to talk about today's world. And really it starts in 1968 with this guy. This is Doug Engelbart. He did a demonstration of the world's first personal computer. In his right hand, he had the world's first mouse. He had a trackpad in his left hand. He had a keyboard that he could use. And he did a desktop publishing demonstration called the mother of all demos. And that's the basis of all computers that we've used up until now. Oh, see you later, Randy. Great to see you. Bye, Randy. Okay. But like with these computers, is everyone going to use computers? Back in the day, people were skeptical. Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest man in the world, founder of Microsoft, said, I know there's a farmer somewhere who never wants a PC, and that's okay with me. Hands up who never touches a PC in this room. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And now he believes in agriculture as being, you know, one of the great pillars to invest in, and he's there, technology and otherwise. And then you had Steve Jobs stand up on stage in 2007 and say, hey, in my hand, I've got the iPhone, and everyone went crazy. And mobile penetration has gone crazy as well. And in 2017, we've progressed quite a long way. In the room, is there anyone here that doesn't have a cell phone? There's always one. Is there anyone in the room that doesn't have a smartphone? Okay. Ooh, a few people. The guy that said it yesterday, in Red Deer was about 28. I was really surprised. I think it will have smartphones eventually. Everyone does. There's about 6 billion people in the world that have got access to cellular communications devices. That's more people in the world that have got access to clean running water, which is quite freaky. I used to use a stat about there's more people in the world that have got access to cell phones than actually have access to toothbrushes. But clean running water is more fundamental than that, right? And that's from the United Nations. And by 2020, we think that there's going to be about 2.87 to 3 billion smartphones on the planet. These are supercomputers in our pockets that we can do many things with. I had someone run up to me yesterday and show me all of the temperatures in all of their grain bins so they can make better decisions on the farm. I'm going to talk a little bit about technology that enables us to do that as well. And then data's growing by about tenfold in the next 3 years, because all these devices in the world are generating more and more data, and it's machines attached to machines, and humans attached to machines, and humans attached to humans via machines. That's causing that growth. And really, we need to look at data through a different lens. Data is the new oil. If you look back a few years, oil companies and banks and grocery outlets, large chains, were the most valuable companies in the world. Now, it's tech companies. It's people like Apple and Alphabet, which is Google's parent company, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. They think that Amazon's going to become $1 trillion company in the next few years. Bill Gates is going to become the world's first trillionaire, they say, as well. So data is the new oil. Data is the new currency in agriculture and other industries as well. So what happens with all of that data? The world progresses. And how does the world progress with all this technology and all the data? Well, it's not a linear growth. We don't just have little changes year by year. We can see how adoption of cell phones, how adoption of computers, usage of data, even that figure of growing data tenfold in the next 3 years, is an exponential growth. And that exponential growth leads to us thinking about technologies as exponential technologies. Someone innovates, someone sees that and other things, and it innovates on top. It means that you grow by a factor that doubles every time that innovation happens. That's the exponential growth. And with that exponential growth, we need to think exponentially about food production as well. Because by 2050, we're expecting about 9 billion people on the planet. And the growing population is going to mean that we're going to have about 60% more food being generated in the world. We've already got humanitarian crises in Africa and other countries around making sure that people get fed. But in the future, it's an urgency that we're going to have to work on today. And really, there's lots of people in research departments and in tech companies and all over the world looking at different areas of research. And here's the Gartner hype cycle for emerging technologies. Probably a little difficult to read, but I'm going to pull some out and talk about them today. And what I'm going to talk about today is the Internet of Things. I'm going to talk about big data, artificial intelligence, automation and drones. And then I'm going to come back from technology and talk a little bit about water, about how technology is helping us deal with the fact that there's not going to be enough water in the world either. And then I'm going to talk about some really edgy, cool stuff that I've been researching and some of the attendees of TechTour Live have told me about over the past 3 days. And I hope that you'll find them to be interesting and exciting. I do. Okay, the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is the idea that you've got many different devices that have got sensors attached. Those sensors can be cameras, they can be temperature sensors, they can detect viruses in the air. And what they do is they connect to the world, they gather data, and they send it back to a central repository. And everything's going to be connected. These lights, this stage, my sneakers, my cell phone in my pocket. your tractors, your hoppers, your grain bins, everything. And some of them are already connected. But by 2020, Cisco thinks that there'll be about 50 billion devices connected in the world. It's an incredible amount of data, incredible amount of insight that we can glean from that. But, you know, it's coming at us fast and furious. And there's a promise here. You know, higher productivity, greater transparency in data and what we're doing. You know, the software to collect the big data that's going to be useful for us. That's the promise. And what's really good about the Internet of Things, if you invest wisely, you're going to get a very fast return on investment, which is good for us. We don't just buy things because they're put in front of us, and we don't read brochures and think, oh, that'd be nice. No, we buy things because we need them. And you will need some of these devices that have got sensors attached that help automate some of the functions within farms, out in the fields, and in the back office as well. And there's some really great entrepreneurs here in Canada working on this. So Semios Bio have got sensors that can live in your orchards and it can monitor, you know, how your vines are doing. It's pretty cool stuff. Innotech Alberta, it's fantastic. I was told this story by the RealAgriculture guys. Sclerotinia detection in Canada. And please excuse me if I said that incorrectly. I'm English, I can say anything and it kind of sounds okay. But they can actually detect germs and viruses in the air that are coming near the crop and send you a text message. That means that you can take action quickly. That's pretty useful, hey? Came from research and development here in Alberta. And then if you're a dairy, a cattle farmer, there's technology, there's a lot of technology with cows. The Internet of Cows. Moocall. So you can attach these devices to the tail of your cow and it can help you reduce the risk of death during birthing. So they actually think that these devices can reduce the mortality rate of cows by about 80%. So it can save a lot of money and it can increase productivity. That's kind of useful. And you can take it off and put it on other cows. So you might not have to fit one in every single cow in the herd as well, depending on what you're using that for. But there's challenges here. Ooh, cost efficiency. Do I spend the money now? What do I get back? How long is it going to take for the return on investment? Security. Is someone going to come and tamper with it? Connectivity. Well, where the cattle is or where the fields are, does it actually have connectivity? Eventually, we'll have 100% connectivity in the world as they put like satellite wireless systems into the atmosphere. We're not quite there yet. Data's coming and training and all these things are considerations. Okay, so that's the Internet of Things. And that's just a glimpse. There's lots and lots of things that are going to be connected. And then we go into the world of big data. We know that data is growing very, very quickly. Having more access to data leads us to better decisions, better insights. It allows us to do machine learning, optimized planting, creating better seed hybrids, you know, identifying disease outbreaks. Really useful, right? Great companies, again, Canadian company, Farmer Hand helps you with the enterprise resource planning. Pretty cool stuff. Then Farmer's Edge, who you've probably heard of here, help you do everything from like job planning, equipment management, insights management and reports, you know, maps. It's pretty cool. Down in the States, you've got a company that's being heavily invested in by venture capitalists from Silicon Valley and beyond, called the Farmers Business Network, that allow you to do a number of different things on a platform. Everything from looking at simplified farm data to let you work out analysis of seeds and yields, chemicals, through to working out the real-world seed intelligence and then sharing information between farms and farmers so that everyone can learn from the mistakes or the advances that we've made, very much like Randy shared with us earlier. But imagine Randy in a supercomputer form, right? We'd all want access to that, right? He ran out the door before I could put a microchip in his head, though. But there's some real concerns around big data usage. I like to tell this story. So about 3 years ago, there was an investment bank called the Union Bank of Switzerland, UBS, that wanted to do better analysis of its investments. And one in especially was Walmart. And they were like, oh, okay, our analysts are looking at data and they're working out, you know, if we're going to progress in terms of profitability quarter by quarter and year on year as well. And they thought, it doesn't feel accurate enough. So they hired a satellite company to take pictures of Walmart parking lots several times a day for a number of months or a quarter to work out how many people were going to Walmart. And they could ascertain some insights from that. Without that insight, they were predicting that Walmart on a quarterly basis were going to make money quarter by quarter. Great, but it was going to be about 1% down on year. Ooh, that's not so good. You'd be a bit more cautious with your investment on that quarter, right? The day before the results are announced, you'd be like, oh, okay, I'll be very careful, very cautious. But the analysts at the satellite company looked at that data and they realized that, yeah, there was going to be growth, but it was also going to be growth year on year as well by about 0.7%. So what do you think? You're more bullish with your investment. And it's coming to agriculture as well. There's a Brazilian company called Cycrop that have got sensors and drone technology. They collect data from all over the world, and they provide analysts with this information about your farm, your neighbor's farms, the general state of various different crops. That's going to affect the market, that's going to affect you, it's going to affect your bottom line. It's coming. And we can't necessarily stop them, especially if they fly their drones high enough so it's outside of our airspace of our farms, right? So it's coming, it's going to affect the markets. But it's good to be part of the story of knowing the data and even understanding how that works from a regulation and policy and legislative perspective. So we're going to work with the governments as well. So we're going to work out, it's like, big data, this is when it gets a little bit mind-blowing. It's like, who owns the data, right? How easy is it for others to acquire the data that you've got? How easy is it for you to acquire the data, that's going to be useful about everyone around you and other growers across North America? Who profits off those analytics? How secure are the services? I had a guy come up to me, he goes, I was approached by this service provider. He said that we could take your data, run these reports for you, they anonymize it and aggregate it, and then they give you other reports, and they share that data with the community. And he goes, I'm scared. And you have to be very careful, because you have to aggregate it and summarize it to a point where they don't know that it's your farm. And then how useful is that data? And if you've got people talking to you today, talk to them about terms and conditions, because you're in charge of that. And you can talk to them about that as a community as well. And you can define what the solutions are and what you find useful, but also how much you want to give away. Okay, Internet of Things, big data. The third one, artificial intelligence, is here. The promise, machines can learn from data on their own and find out things that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find out manually. Automation, you can put them in things and they can run on their own. Improved planning and efficiency, they can run 24/7, 365, potentially. So the chief scientist of Baidu, which is a big Chinese search engine company, called Andrew Ng, he said that AI is the new electricity. At the beginning of the 19th century, electricity came and it revolutionized everything in the world, absolutely everything. AI is here, and it's powerful enough to revolutionize every single thing that we do in the world. Every single operation, anything that a computer touches, any machinery, any human job potentially, is going to touch. And that's the exponential growth of computing. It's become more powerful. It's easier to analyze more data more quickly. But we're still only going to reach rat-level intelligence, so say the smart people at Google, this year. But you know what? I'm pretty sure that we all know that rats are fairly smart if they want to do specific things. And research has been experimenting and putting AI in different situations, in banking, in retail, in farming, and beyond, to find out what we can do. And last year, Google created a program called AlphaGo. And AlphaGo played the ancient Chinese game of Go. It's thousands of times more complex than chess. In 1998, Garry Kasparov, the world grandmaster at chess, was beaten by IBM's Deep Blue, head in his hands. There was a catastrophe. Humans were like, Terminator, we're all going to die, right? That was a little over-dramatic back then, but since then things have progressed, things have got stronger. Well, AlphaGo beat the world champion, 9th Dan, Lee Sedol of Go last year, 4 games to 1. And Lee Sedol said, "Thank you for letting me win 1 game. This program's so intuitive, and it feels so human to play them for several hours at a time, that it's a challenge, and you can't beat them." And in fact, in December, it played 60 of China's grandmasters of Go, and it beat 60 people in a row. And everyone's in awe. And people aren't so scared today. They just know that there's a huge optimism that comes from technology like this. But with that optimism comes some wonder. If we can take these tasks, and if we can do reasoning, and create intuition in a computer using artificial intelligence with access to data, it's going to revolutionize some fundamental things in the world, like what we do for a living. There are jobs, if you can repeat them easily, right? They might be knowledge jobs, moving things around in a spreadsheet, or moving papers from desk to desk. There might be jobs where you literally move things from desk to desk, actually, using humans to do the grunt work that robots could do, right? They're all dead-end jobs. And in the next few years, it's all going to change. Jobs are going to change. So 42% of Canadian jobs are at risk. So this is a study by the Brookfield Institute from Ryerson. And they actually said in the next 10 to 20 years, 42% of Canadian jobs could be automated out of the way. But what jobs, right? They looked at a large number of jobs, dozens of jobs. And the full report can be seen, and it's really interesting reading. And these are the top 5. If you work in retail, you're an administrative assistant, you're a food counter attendant, you're a cashier, or maybe surprisingly, in the top 5, you're a truck driver. These jobs aren't going to exist. And I don't think these jobs are going to exist in 10 years. And I actually think that even looking at truck drivers, and we all use truck drivers, it's a repetitive task that can be done by some artificial intelligence and automated solutions. And it's going to go within 5 to 8 years. That could be like 1 million jobs disrupted in Canada. It could be 3.5 million, 4 million jobs down in the States as well. It's going to change how society even looks at transportation. But I've been asked a number of questions after I give these talks. Are we going to all be out of work? Why will we have to get out of bed in the morning? Well, in the Industrial Revolution, when the spinning jenny came into the factories, it didn't necessarily put all the people that were spinning yarn out of work. It took some of those people into different jobs. So pattern cutters and designers, like these other things could be done by humans. So it's just a shifting sands of jobs, away from the repetitive, kind of mundane, boring tasks, to things that are more knowledge-based. And it's going to raise the tide of what we can do with our operations. And what's really interesting, I pulled this stat earlier today. There's a lot of need for information technology jobs. So I've been talking about computers and big data, the Internet of Things. These are all information technology. So right now, Canada needs about 182,000 people to fill positions by 2019. Web technicians, software engineers, network operators, consultants, all people that could work with you on your farms as well once technology comes into the farms. And the challenge is that in 2015, only 29,000 people graduated from an IT field. We're woefully short on talent. So when you start thinking about, it's like, oh, what are people going to do? Some of the people are going to be needed to train in IT fields, right? That's what I did when I was like 20 years old. I was lucky I made the choice back then as well. So there's some real challenges though with AI, changing how we train people for work in a more technical world. It's not easy for everyone, but do you know what? People can retrain. Humans are clever like that. Training AI and building trust, you can train AI to be terrible. Terrible at a job. So you've got to be careful about how we do that. We've got to work with scientists. We've got to work with people that build training data. We've got to work with the farmers. We've got to work with the other industries that are going to mobilize that. Maintenance and security again. Okay, AI. That's slightly scary, right? So you take that AI and you put some practical application with that, and one of them is around automation and drones. So with automation and drones, improved efficiencies, ability to work longer hours, reduced risk of injury to workers. These are all positive things. And because we have to generate more productivity, we have to generate 25% more productivity to meet the goals that we need to meet in terms of yield, food production, logistics, and such like. It's going to be important to have automation there. And the agricultural robot side is growing exponentially. It's that upward curve again. So by 2020, it's going to be a $16 billion industry. And when you think in 2013, it was just $800 or so million. That's crazy growth. We're all going to be using robotics in some way by 2020. And there's lots of applications, everything from mobile dairy farm robotics through to fresh fruit picking, driving tractors or whatever. And some people are thinking that autonomous vehicles are going to become prevalent and dominant by the year 2026. This is a graph from Morgan Stanley. They're calling it the utopian world. I don't know whether we can call it utopia, but it's certainly a more progressive world. And we've all heard about autonomous tractors by this point, tractors that can drive themselves. And by 2027, there'll be about 660,000 self-driving tractors as standard being sold year on year. I think that's going to come quicker as well. So there's already technologies, autonomous tractor. I've come up with this technology where you can fit things to the cab, fit things to the vehicle, and they can drive themselves. And you can train them, and they go and do the work. There's the Spirit AT400, which doesn't even have a cab and a steering wheel, so you literally have to program it and it goes and does what it needs to do. Then you've got things like weed control with the Bosch weeding robot. Then you've got wine bots that go between the vines to check that everything's okay and they get rid of weeds and ensure temperatures and everything are fine. Herding drones, kind of weird. Down in Australia, these researchers came up with this. I grew up with guys running out into the fields with dogs that are incredibly smart. And I think a dog's still better than a herding drone right now. Right? Then these cool little things called Rospheres. You could have dozens of these all programmed to ride around your fields, rolling around, capturing data, sending information back to you so you know what to do and how to change, certain things to do with soil or whatever out in the fields. And then from the robots in the fields to the robots in the sky, the drones. So we know that farms are big. In Saskatchewan, they're bigger than most. They're about 675 hectares. I didn't put any data for Alberta, unfortunately. But it's big acreages. And you can have some technology like Lancaster here. It doesn't look like a quadcopter, that we think are drones. It looks like an aeroplane. And you can drop sensors and cameras and do all sorts of things with it. And it can fly across the fields. In fact, it's so good that in 40 minutes, it can cover about 120 hectares, right? And it can actually look at 100 different levels of light. It can look at different problem areas, and it can do a number of different things like this. Terrain mapping, weed detection, crop health indexes, season monitoring. It's kind of useful. Does anyone in the room actually use these kinds of technologies, this drone technology right now? I bet there is someone. We found someone yesterday who didn't put their hand up. Yeah? It's useful. But what about some smaller applications with bigger impacts? And here we're starting to walk into the future applications. This is where I get really excited about things. We know that in a lot of parts of North America there's a problem with pollination and the bee population disappearing. I don't think so in Western Canada. Apparently it's got quite a burgeoning bee population. That's fantastic. I think it's pretty good in Quebec. And someone snuck up into Quebec and stole 5 million bees last year. Where did they end up? It's big business. Maybe it ended up down in the States. There's a real shortage out down there. But the very, very smart people at Harvard were like, this is a problem, what can we do? And they were inspired by Whole Foods running this demonstration of what the impact is. And there's an advertising campaign around this. They removed all the fruit and veg from the front of one of their very, very large flagship stores and said, if bees disappear, this is what disappears. And 75% of what was actually displayed at the front of the store was gone. Smart people at Harvard said, we're going to build robo-bees, right? That's someone's finger, and that's a robo-bee. And that's been in development now for a number of years. So they're quite advanced. It can get wet, it can swim, it can fly out of there, it can fly around in swarms, it can do a number of different things. That's pretty fascinating, right? Imagine like buying a box of robo-bees, right? Bringing it to the farm, setting them go, and you never have to see them again because they'll charge themselves and they'll do the business that you need them to do. And you'll collect the data and it'll be very useful to you. But you know, they could go about pollinating crops, they could do search and rescue, they could do surveillance, right? Kind of interesting. But there's some real challenges as we put things in the skies and out in the fields. Securing and patrolling the farm's ground, we can't just leave them. People could like hijack them, hack into them and take them away, right? Navigating legislation, what does it mean? As this technology comes in, the governments are going to be like, okay, what does this mean for usage and the effect on humans? Training and maintenance, hacking and theft, and like rogue units suddenly coming into the farmland. It's like, what are you doing? How can you protect yourself? So that was fun. Automation and drones. And then we get into one that I found to be hugely controversial as I've been speaking to farmers on this tour. And I was warned about this at the beginning by the guys at Real Ag. Solar and electric. Solar farms. How many people in the room have invested in or are investing in solar? Oh, yeah, someone at the back over there, someone here. I've had people come up to me every single day and show me what they're doing. A guy on Monday came up and showed me the application where he could show me in real time how much electricity he was generating from his solar panels. It's pretty cool stuff. It's going to happen more. It's going to be more prevalent. And the market's growing. So I guarantee you that at least half of this room within 5 years is going to be considering this. Because it's going to start to make sense, the cost is going to come down, and it's going to save you money. And these solar industries and wind and other renewable industries are creating jobs at 12 times the speed of other industries as well. In fact, down in the States, people that were working in oil are now working in solar because they can't keep the jobs because automation's taking them out of the way. And in solar, you have to do a lot of installation and maintenance, and that's a very physical thing. And then it's really interesting down the States even more. Doesn't really happen up here quite yet in Canada. But farmers are being approached by utility companies, and they say, we will rent your land off of you if you let us put a solar farm on there. Would we do that? Ooh, seems like a bad idea. Well, they're paying between $300 and $700 an acre. In a lot of cases, it's a no-brainer, and there's a lot of farmers down in the States that are stopping growing a lot of crops, and they're creating solar farms because that energy generation is becoming more and more important and more valuable. And companies like SunPower help farmers put solar on their farms. The challenge is in Canada, we've kind of dropped the ball. Countries like China have invested heavily in renewables and in the technology to capture that energy from natural resources, like the sun and the wind, flow of river, whatever. And China's making a huge change over to solar right now. They're going to be the world leaders. We need to step up investment as a country. I'm not saying within the ag industry, but the demand's going to come in, and in the US as well. So we're going to be left behind, and we're going to be at the mercy of people providing us with technology that we can't control the prices on, right? But with all this electricity being generated cleanly, what about electric vehicles, zero-emission vehicles? Well, the cost of batteries is coming down, because one of the big challenges is how can we store enough energy so that we can drive a car or drive a vehicle for hours and hours for a greater period of time for longer distances. If you actually look at fuel density, this was an interesting fact I learned this week. 1 ton of gasoline, to replace that with batteries, you need 60 tons of batteries today. So there's a problem. We haven't quite solved it yet, right? But it's coming. And why is it coming? Well, you've got companies like Tesla with Elon Musk selling 400,000 pre-orders of the Tesla 3. This makes it the largest automobile manufacturer in the world by 2020. 400,000 vehicles running purely on electricity with batteries by 2020, 2021. And each of these cars is around $45,000. And by about 2023, they think that these cars are going to be at parity with gas-powered vehicles. And what you're going to choose? The vehicle with lots of moving parts that cost you hundreds of dollars every year as they get older, or the vehicle where there's no moving parts and electricity is going to be free in a lot of different charging stations across Canada and North America. It's a no-brainer, right? But where do we find the sexy cars for the farms? I couldn't really find any. So, you've got these little utility vehicles that kind of look like golf carts. They're kind of useful for hauling things around, people and tools and such like. It's pretty cool. And then John Deere came out, and you might have seen this, the CSAM. It's their first electric tractor. But it falls short. And everyone thinks that it falls short. I mean, would you buy a tractor that's got 4 hours and 55 kilometers of range? Is that useful for you? It's not really, especially because it takes 4 hours to recharge it, right? But technology, we know, grows exponentially, and the cost comes down as well. So you can guarantee that this technology over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be hundreds of kilometers of range, and it's going to be able to last like 8, 10 hours, right? Not just from these guys, from other tractor manufacturers as well. But, there's a roadmap. Maybe we go from diesel to biofuel. Does anyone use biodiesel here right now? Yeah? A little bit? More people will be on the way to electric. And I think electric's going to kick in 2023 to 2025. People think that that's a little short. But do you know what? In my experience, if I go longer than that, that's being hugely conservative. I'm a futurist, and I'd like to make bets on things, I actually make monetary bets on things sometimes. I haven't lost yet, but then I predict things that are way out, and hopefully they forget if I lost. Okay, so we've got all these things: electric vehicles, Internet of Things, drones, artificial intelligence. It's an ecosystem. It's the new ecosystem, potentially, of the farm and the agriculture industry as well. But we've got to stop and start thinking, if we're going to connect all these things and have all this data, we're going to have to consider something very important here: security. We've all heard about, cyber attacks and malware, things like that. These are all things that are going to come into agriculture, and we need to be very aware of that. Hackers can break into power grids and shut them down. There's a video there that you can go and see. They can break into traffic grids, causing cities to go into chaos. Someone actually hacked into the San Francisco transit service and shut it down and held them to ransom. Luckily, San Francisco had a backup system that was unaffected. They took it down, they fixed the vulnerabilities and brought it back up. And in true San Francisco fashion, the hacker that had hacked their system got hacked by a bunch of hackers from San Francisco. And they stole all of his Bitcoin, You can't write this, right? It's cool. I like that story, though. And they were lucky. There's a Wired article and a video of someone hijacking a Jeep as someone drives it down the street. And really, how often does this really happen? Come on. Well, in 2015, about 4,291 times it happened with a cost of around about $50 million. People were hijacking hospitals and saying, you need to pay me $3 million in Bitcoin for us to release it. And they've had to. People die. Security is at the front of mind of everyone in the world. If you've got kids and you want them to work with you on the farm, get them trained up in IT and get them to focus on security, it's going to pay off. This is the only red slide in the whole deck. Your farm will be at risk as you bring this technology in. So make sure that when you have the conversations, when you're buying it, talk about vulnerabilities. If there's passwords to be set the passwords. And don't call it password, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do not. Complex passwords, please. Okay, technology, security, all this good stuff. I like to talk about water. We know that water is a resource that we're all very aware of. It takes about 1,800 gallons of water to grow 1 pound of beef, 880 gallons to make 1 gallon of milk, 198 gallons to make 1 pound of barley. These are numbers from the United Nations again. And then you correlate that with 86% of people moving to cities. Cities don't have huge amounts of water to bandy around. In fact, it's a challenge keeping that water flowing there. We certainly don't have tons out in the field. So this ushers in new ways of growing food on maybe a slightly smaller scale, but important that this is going to happen. Hydroponics. So this is Aero Farms. This is based out of New Jersey. They grow greens, they grow herbs, they do a number of different things there. They're incredibly efficient. In 16 days, they grow what would normally take 30 days in a field. 95% less water, 55% less fertilizers, 0 pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. It means it's cheaper to grow, right? Obviously, it costs something else because you have to use electricity. But really, this is efficient. So there's a higher throughput. In fact, when I was in Saskatoon, in North Saskatoon, there's some people from Eco Bain Gardens there. There's a vertical farm there in North Saskatoon. Is anyone working vertical farms here in the room today? I'm not sure how many there are around here, if any, but there will be. And then you've got aquaponics, and I love aquaponics. It's the idea you can create this ecosystem of, you've got water where you can farm fish, and you've got veg above it that's fertilized with the waste products from the fish. It's a great closed ecosystem. And you can even buy them for home. I always think that, I'm going to do this at home, and then one night I'm going to be like, I fancy having fish, some veggies for dinner. I'm going to go and get my fishing rod. Go over. I'm a terrible fisher, so it probably wouldn't even work, Just get my net, and that's what you could be able to be doing. IKEA, a number of companies are going to put them in their stores. They're already putting hydroponics kits in their stores in the UK. And then you've got smart people like Kimball Musk, who's Elon Musk's brother, who's actually working with a bunch of entrepreneurs in Brooklyn, New York City, to take shipping containers and to turn them into vertical farms and micro farms. These are first-gen farmers. These are people that would normally do tech or whatever. They're experimenting with new ways of creating food. They see that it's a really important industry to be a part of, agriculture as a whole, even on a small scale. And it's interesting, 18% of the world's shipping containers aren't used. So it kind of fits nicely, right? And then you've got this grocery store in Holland that actually grows the herbs in the store on the shelves, and you go and cut them and take them home. Then they replace it out, and they've already been growing stuff out in the warehouse. They bring it back in. Amazing. Shortening that distance to be able to get what we need within the city context. Okay, I love vertical farms and aquaponics and all that. I truly think that that's going to revolutionize how cities grow food. But then what about the future? The future. This is the really cool stuff. And I've added a whole bunch of stuff over the last 2 to 3 days. I was over in the corner adding extra slides. So I hope that you like some of this. So we're going to talk a little bit about alternative power, new foods, gene editing, human augmentation, and smart dust. Alternative power. A friend of mine sent me an article the other day. Do you know about solar fuel? Being able to generate hydrogen fuel from the sun using a process. And you can actually add carbon dioxide to that and generate things like fertilizer as well. That's pretty cool. It's still in research and development, but I think that we're going to see that coming. Right? It's going to be useful. It's an alternative to just electric vehicles and solar, hydrogen and fuel cells, right? And then there's a company in Toronto called HydroStore that's got this amazing system. So when it's really cheap to use electric at certain times of the day, it turns on its system and it fills bags that are pressurized underneath the water and just off of the shore of Toronto and fills it full of compressed air. That doesn't make sense. And a farmer was explaining this to me yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, I've kind of heard about this. At the cheaper times of the day, if you use a certain amount of electricity, say you use $1,000 worth of electricity, and you fill these bags, at other times of the day when it's $2,000 to use the same amount of electricity, you release the compressed air back through generators, and you've got access to that energy at $1,000, saving $1,000 per hour at that point in time. Genius. This is what happens, exponential growth in thinking. I think that could be really cool going forward. It's going to be part of the overall ecosystem. And then imagine like creating milk without cows, or eggs without chickens, or beef without cows. People are growing beef in the laboratory. That's pretty cool. And a few years ago, it was like shocking to a lot of people. But now, in the last few years, per burger, it's gone down from $325,000 per burger to being on the shelves in New York City at $11.36. No cows were harmed in the making of that burger. And it's beef. And they use a bunch of different technologies. It's fascinating to me. And this is the Impossible Burger. The Impossible Burger looks like beef, tastes like beef, bleeds like beef, and it's 100% organic vegetables within that. In fact, as I found out, at Portage Prairie, they actually take alfalfa and pea protein and use it for these. That's cool. The things that you find out. But like these burgers are going crazy. We're actually moving towards a plant-based diet for many people. Maybe not so in Alberta so much, right? I've eaten beef like at least 4 times this week. It's delicious. So that's good. I'm not quite there with this. I want to try this though. And then someone came up to me as well, a guy called Steve, and he was like, "You didn't talk about insect protein." It's like, you're right, I didn't. That's kind of strange. And he was like, no, there's this Canadian company, Entomo, that creates protein based on insects. If you think about growing crickets, Randy talked about crickets, I'm talking about eating crickets, right? And you grow crickets, you can grow a lot of crickets in a very small amount of space. And in Asia, insect protein's been a standard. So why not? And then you've got Soylent, which completely replaces food altogether. The CEO would rather have you only drink Soylent and eat no food at all ever again. He's an interesting guy. I don't necessarily think it's going to take off for a lot of people. My next door neighbor does it. It might be good to have a sip of it as I eat my steak. It tastes okay, but I kind of like food. And then gene editing, really exciting. I'm going to the London Swine Convention in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to talk to pig farmers about a number of different technologies. One of the things I'm going to talk about is CRISPR-Cas9. This is technology developed in the 80s where they used to genetically modify plants. And now they're genetically modifying pigs, cows. Apparently in China they've even done it to humans. Don't know how legal that is, right? The new world of creating a more reliable food source. In fact, in the UK, some researchers have been working with some other US researchers as well, and they've completely wiped out a common viral disease in a small group of pigs that they've been doing CRISPR-Cas9 with. That's good news for farmers, right? That means that we don't have the mortality rates drop to almost zero. And this is great technology. I think CRISPR-Cas9 is going to change the world in many, many ways, in and out of agriculture. And then imagine if you had your workers on your farm, they get tired, they have to lift heavy things. You put them in exoskeletons, and they can carry on with their days. That's coming. I actually think that no one's going to be in wheelchairs in the future because everyone's going to be given exoskeletons, and some of those people that have got broken spinal columns that actually can't control their legs will use their brains to control their exoskeletons. It's pretty cool. Then smart dust. So you can create sensors like the Internet of Things, but a micro level. This is actually just balanced on the edge of a nickel. Tiny. Throw it out into the wind, it goes across your fields, it gathers data, it helps you understand what's going on. It's been experimented with right now. It's research and development, but it's coming. And then people are saying, okay, we need to leave the Earth and we need to go and colonate Mars. Who wants to live on Mars? I don't. I really don't. And I'm a futurist, A lot of people do. They think, it's interesting to go further, think differently. A lot of invention comes from going to space and going to other planets. We wouldn't have Velcro if we didn't go to the moon. Velcro is pretty useful, right? So we're going to learn a lot. But I don't think that we're going to be like Matt Damon sat on the planet from the film The Martian, growing potatoes with his own poop. Not quite yet. I definitely know that they're not going to be cows on the moon. But they might have machines that actually grow beef. And that's really interesting, right? Come on, Nick, get serious. I'm very serious about everything I've spoken about today, even the strange section at the end. Everything's changing. Everything's going through many changes, exponential growth of computing and research and how we're thinking about running industry. And I actually think that in the future, farmers, as they already are like mainstays, foundational pillars of the community. They're going to feed the populace, and this is important. But I think there's going to be constant innovation, and what I'm calling the farmer innovator. There's going to be active research and development on the farm, the Internet of Things, data science and data scientists helping us get more value and working out what we can do better to create more yield. Automation and drones, things out in our fields doing things for us whilst we're back at HQ with our dashboards. Sustainability, renewable energy and things like that. And then security, making sure that the farms are secure. So maybe this is a strange vision of the future that I've spoken about today for you. I think it's a vision where many parts of what I've spoken about today is going to be here within 8 to 10 years. And by 2030, everything's going to be different. Thank you very much.